are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 72. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how to stop over drinking in 90 days without missing out on life. If you're not an alcoholic, but fed up with saying yes to a drink when you mean to say no, you're in the right place. Hi all, and welcome back to the podcast. Today I want to talk about the fascinating subject of when we rebel against ourselves. So if you find yourself rebelling against yourself and the goals you've set for yourself, you are in the right place. Now, specifically in my world, right, in coaching people one-on-one on changing their relationship with alcohol, how this shows up is when you decide you're going to do something about your drinking, right? You make a decision, and then you sign up to do the work necessary to get yourself to that goal. Now, whether that means you follow along with me on my podcasts, and as you know, I always include a lot of actionable content so that you can go ahead and do this work, or whether you say, hey, Anna, I want to work with you. I want to get results faster, right? So you sign up with me to do the work. And then, so we go along, and then at some point, inevitably, you're going to reach this point of rebellion. And in fact, what I'm going to offer, the really cool thing about this is that this can show up in all areas of our life, right? Not just drinking. Today, my example is going to be all about our relationship with alcohol. But this kind of self-rebellion shows up all over the place. We're dealing with our family and our careers and money and jobs and all the rest of it. So this really is a meta life skill that if you learn how to do this, and you can learn it on the topic and area of drinking, you're going to have so much of a bigger life all round because you're going to see where this is showing up in more than one place. So great. So listen up. Now, first, I want to back up a little, and I want to talk about the concept of emotional intelligence. Now, this is most often defined as the ability to perceive, use, understand, manage, and handle emotions. Now, when we are functional, when we are functioning as emotional adults, as emotional grown-ups, what that means is that we are accepting that we are responsible for how we feel in every moment of our lives. We are in charge of how we think, and we are in charge of how we feel. However, when we start to function, and we often move into this, as emotional children, even when we are adults, this is when we start to have low emotional intelligence. And how this shows up is that we blame other people for how we feel. We blame other people for how we act, and we blame other people or other circumstances even for the results that we get in our lives. You don't have to work hard, unfortunately, to find examples of this. This is all around us all the time, right? We blame our husbands, we blame the government, we blame our schooling, we blame the cost of living crisis, we blame our parents, we blame our neighbours, we blame our boss for not being more sympathetic to our home situation, we blame our landlord for making us feel stressed about the rent. On and on and on and on it goes. Message boards are full of this. You'll hear this. The newspapers are full of this. We are surrounded by this. Might be a little fun piece of homework there for you to do a little thought download to see where it's showing up in your lives. But in any case, the net result ends up being that we're blaming everyone else for the way we feel and for why we're doing what we're doing. We're blaming everyone else for the results we're getting. We're in effect saying, if all this stuff over here wasn't happening to me, then my life would be so much better. My life will be so different, right? Let me give you an example of this from my own life. Rewind a few years, right? When I was first trying to change my drinking. And by this, I mean when I was really, I'd really got to the point of I just got to figure this out, right? Got to get my arms around this. I really can't believe I can't do this just yet. Right, so I was very annoyed, very frustrated, extremely frustrated with myself, because I saw that I had my whole life together except for how I saw this one thing. I felt tremendous shame about it. And that seemed to be reinforced because every time I looked for help, all I ever read about was go to AA and stop drinking immediately, right? If you think you have any kind of problem, that's what you got to do. But I knew that wasn't for me, that solution. And I knew that wasn't what I needed, right? Which is why I decided to become a coach when I'd figured it all out, so that people like me would have a smoother route to making the changes. But I digress. All right, so this would happen to me. I'd feel all this frustration, all this annoyance for everything that was happening. I'd give myself a jolly good talking to. I'd fall back on the well-worn approach I've been trying and not succeeding at for years, which was, okay, I'm deciding I'm just not going to drink tonight or tomorrow or the next day. I'm going to see how long I can go. That's one approach. Or I'd set myself a target. I'd say, right, at the party tonight, just at the party tonight, I was just going to drink one glass and leave it at that, right? And of course, you know where that went. If I hadn't done it, then I would tell myself you haven't been able to do it the 500 times before. The 501st time was a foregone failure, of course, because I almost talked myself into that. Anyway, so I was stuck in this loop and I did this again and again and again. And then sooner or later, what happened was I became, in effect, a complete emotional child in my own life. So fascinating to see what happened. I would start to treat the plans I had for myself, the drink plans, for instance, as if it were my parent. Right? I would be the child in that relationship with my own plan, and I would get frustrated and rebel against the plan just like I was a child. Right? You can't tell me what to do. Right? I'm not going to do that. I'm not just going to go to this party and drink one glass of wine. Right? If I want a glass of white, if I want two, or if I want three, or if my friend's going to be there and she's going to bring my favourite bottle, I'm going to jolly well have that wine. It won't hurt anyway. It's just one night. I'm a grown-up. I can do this. All right, so I go through that. I go against myself. I take action against what I actually wanted. I'd forget that the plan was the thing I wanted. I had chosen for myself. And then, to add insult to injury, I would blame the plan and say I still didn't manage how to change my drinking. So then I'd say, well, that plan was useless. Right? It was the plan's fault. So I would go into this place where I was the child and the process that I was following was the adult, and I was kind of like pushing back against it. I was blaming the process, I was blaming the plan, I was blaming all the decisions, all the things I had told myself I needed to do. I'd be really just trying to rebel against the very thing I wanted, which was changing my drinking, right? So I go to this place where I was want this and I want that and I want it and I want it, and it was just like I was a toddler in a shop stamping my foot for the chocolate bar, right? I want it now. I want it now. That's what I was in effect doing with alcohol. And of course I wasn't literally stamping my foot and saying I want it now, but that's where I was taking myself, right? I would go to this place where it's not fair. It's kind of like a whiny voice, right? It's not fair. I want to have fun too. So why can't I drink? They're all drinking. They don't see a problem with it. They even drink more than me, and they don't think there's a problem, but why do I? Right? So I would go to this place of blame and not taking responsibility, and I'd be feeling very sorry for myself. And it was like I wanted actually the drink plan. I wanted the process I was following. I wanted to take care of me. I wanted to make me happy, and I wanted to be responsible for what I drank. But I wasn't doing it because I was too busy rebelling against all these things, all these structures I'd put in place that were there only to help me. Right? So I'd sort of turned into this toddler screaming against all these things that I put in place where I knew that would work for me, would help me, just because I didn't feel like it. Right? And then, I want the drink. I'm going to have the drink instead. And then, of course, the final straw to break the camel's back was that when I was done with all of this, I would drink. Then the next morning, I would blame the process for my lack of success, right? And I just kind of got stuck in this cycle where I was deciding what I wanted for sure. Absolutely, I want to do this today. Now is the time. Then over time, I would invariably start to not follow the process or the plan. I might slip a little bit here or there, but I really wouldn't be maybe paying attention to how I was feeling, wouldn't be paying attention to what I was seeking. And I started to pay more attention to how it really wasn't fair and this wasn't cricket really. I mean, why am I doing this? And I started to just not do what I had already sold myself and what I needed to do. All right, as I said, feeling sorry for myself. And then I'd end up back at square one, only I wasn't. It felt every time like I was back at square minus one and square minus two and square minus three, because each time I got back to that point, I now had more evidence, right, that I wasn't able to do this, and more evidence that drinking was, Anna, this is the one thing in your life that you haven't solved yet, and you're now getting further and further from your goal. So if this sounds like you, I hear you. It's totally normal. It's not unexpected what you're going through. It's not a bad thing. It's not just you, and it doesn't make you a bad person. Nothing has gone wrong. It's just the brain operating as it should. And I see, so I've just stepped you through how I saw that sort of in terms of an example. Let me strip that back and let me share there are 4 phases really that I see in this model, in this cycle. Firstly, we decide we're going to change our drinking. We feel good. We're up for the challenge. Gung-ho. Yeah, it's going to happen now. I am all in. Second, sooner rather than later, or at some point, it starts to get hard. It starts to feel like a bit of a battle. We don't like being told what to do, even when it's us. This is so fascinating. Even when it's us doing the telling, and even when we're telling ourselves to do the thing specifically that we wanted to do, because we need to do this thing to get the result we want, we get all stroppy. We act like toddlers. And the language we use here is so interesting, right? We'll say things like, I'm a grown-up. I can have a drink if I want to. Some of my clients, my lovely clients, if you're listening to this, you know who you are. I'm not calling you out. I used to do this all the time too. Then what happens is we blame other people. We blame the tools we're using, or we blame ourselves, right? We blame the stupid drink plan. I used to see those words all the time, stupid drink plan. We blame, my clients might blame, why did Anna set me this challenge? Okay, none of my lovely clients have actively told me they blame me, but I'm sure it's part of the deal that they're secretly coming up in their heads, right? We then might say, because I don't want to do this. I mean, why did I agree to this? I don't want to do this. And by the way, this even comes up if someone is being kind to us. I want to offer that too. And let's say someone's really out there just trying to be helpful. And if they mention something about our drinking, and because they're just trying to help us keep on track, they're not even checking up on us, they're just being kind, that can really get our hackles going, right? And then we decide, right, you don't think I'm going to do this, and well, I'm just going to, you think I need to be babied, well, I'll show you, right? We start to treat these people who with kindness are approaching us, we treat them as a parent, and we then rebel against them, right? I'll show you what I can do. I'm show you that I'm a grown-up here. And of course, then we end up doing the thing we actually don't want to do, which is drink. Then from that feeling low in responsibility, we feel like a victim. And when we're in that scenario and we're feeling like a victim, we drink. Right? And as I say, the next day, we feel even worse about our abilities, and we've reinforced the desire reward habit with the fact that if we feel bad, we drink, and the way to feel better is to drink, right? It sustains. So what should you do instead if you find yourself in this sort of rebellious area, especially if you tell yourself you're such a rebellious person, right? So this is all where we don't want to be, right? We're playing the blame game. And I'm going to offer today 3 ways to counteract it. You can use them all, or you can just pick one. See how it goes for you. Pick one and then start with that and then go to the others. The first is whatever you decide to do about changing your relationship with alcohol, whatever it is, whether you work on your own, work with a coach, decide on something. I want you to make it a choice, because it really is a choice. You don't have to do anything, right? There are consequences from doing that. If you think you're over drinking too much, there are for sure consequences for that, but you don't have to do anything. Every time somebody comes to me and they say they want to work with me, I trust that they are looking out for themselves. They know what's best for themselves. And we talk about what their goal is, right? It's an active choice. At no point do I say, no. What you need to be doing is this. And this is the only result that you're going to go for. It's the only thing that's going to work. And that's why I find that AA, for so many people who, again, do not have a physical addiction and not drinking out of withdrawal, why AA is such a turn off, because kind of, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, you've got to strive to this, you've got to do this. I mean, such a turn off for me and so many people I know, right? So that's the first thing. Make this a choice. See it as a choice. Acknowledge it as a choice. Now, the reason why this works so well is this really separates us from that feeling of being a toddler. Right? When we're in a toddler mode, it's because we are being told what to do by a parent. There is some level of authority, some level of rule there outside of us, and we feel like we have no power. We are grown-ups, we are adults, we do have the power, to make choice. And I want you to see, I find that it helps. We often forget this, I think, and so when we're stuck in this kind of blamey type feeling, it's this fault, their fault, we don't see our own power, we don't see what responsibility we have. So do it in a playful way. And I always think back to when I was young, I'd go and visit one of my nans for tea. She would have all the tea, the sandwiches and all the rest of it laid out on the table. And there was a rule that we had to have, I think it was 2 sandwiches, or some sandwiches anyway, before we had any of the jelly, any of the cakes, any of the nice stuff, right? All the stuff we wanted. We had to have these sandwiches. And these sandwiches were pretty vile. My nanny was a lovely lady, but she would make these sandwiches hours before we arrived. She wouldn't cover them in any kind of cling film. So they'd be dry, and the crust would kind of be shriveled, and they'd be sort of, bending up, like sort of going up into sort of like an arch, like a, sort of bending at the corners. Anyway, you can imagine, not very nice. So not very nice actually anyway to eat, even had we been adults, but we had to eat these, right? Had to eat as part of the deal as being a child. And I used to get really infuriated because the adults didn't. I'd see them going straight for whatever it is they wanted. Anyway, but we had to. Now, today, of course, I don't have to do that. And the way I celebrate that is I sometimes with my husband, if we're feeling not that hungry, we'll do mad things. Like we'll have rhubarb crumble with custard instead of dinner. All right? So we skip the savory piece and we just go straight to the rhubarb crumble, which I adore. I don't eat it a lot. There's sugar in it for sure. Not something I eat a lot of. And I know it's not all that nutritional and all the rest, but that's not really the point here. The point here is this is a fun way to give me the message that I'm in charge. If all I want to eat for dinner is rhubarb crumble with custard, that's all I need to eat, right? There's no one else. There's no one telling me you've got to have those sandwiches first. You've got to have the casserole or the steak or the whatever, right? Now, if I did this every day, for sure, I think I would have a weight problem and I'd have to take responsibility for that. But you get my point here that you get to decide for you what you will do, and with that comes responsibility, right, for any consequences, positive or negative. But the point here is that you have choice. So I take myself back to that my nan's sandwich scenario where I really remember I didn't have the choice and I didn't have the responsibility, and now I do. So that's the first thing. Make it a choice. The second thing is I want you to grasp the responsibility that you are giving yourself, that you're giving as yourself as an option. We achieve adult emotional intelligence when we decide to take full responsibility for every single thing we feel and to not start blaming ourselves, so other people or ourselves. This shows up as us blaming ourselves, right? We don't start blaming ourselves for any thoughts or feelings or actions that we're taking that we don't like. Now, I mention this specifically because there is a trend here that when we reach the point where we're not blaming someone else for how we feel. For instance, I see this with people where they say, yeah, I get it that it's not my friend's fault, that I'm not feeling fun, right, if I'm not drinking, because that's on me. I create fun for me. So we get that. But then we have this tendency to maybe turn that blame onto ourselves and say, all this time I've been thinking that, all this time I've been the one who's responsible and I never saw it. I'm just such a stupid person. I mean, why didn't I see this for myself before? Right, so that isn't, my friend, that is not the intention of this process. The intention of what I'm saying here is for you to say, so if I feel this way, if I'm feeling this way about myself and about my drinking and my ability and so on, it's because of the way I'm thinking, right? If I'm acting in this way, it's because of the way I'm thinking. And that I can then be curious and totally fascinated about that. And I can treat myself with kindness and compassion instead of beating myself up for it, for not realizing this sooner, because now I know that I can change. So the third thing that I see happen is that we shame ourselves for helping ourselves, right? So I want you to stop doing that. Stop the shame. Now, this shows up even when things are going well and even when we're taking responsibility. But then perhaps we start to feel shame at the fact that, well, we reached out for the help, and maybe that means there's something wrong with us. And maybe while we're using the tools like drink, we might be being very effective with it. We start to shame ourselves as to why is it me who needs to do this, right? You might say, my friend Sarah doesn't struggle with drinking. My husband can take it or leave it. They don't have to write drink plans or do any of this sort of stuff. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to reach out to a coach. So why do I? Right? And when we're thinking like that, that can lead us to rebelling against something that is actually working for us, right? When the tools are working. But this thinking really doesn't help us. It just deepens the shame, makes us more prone to rebelling against the very tools that are helping us. So if that sounds like you, I want you to see the tools that are out there, and specifically also the tools I cover, as they're just really aids to help. There are things to help, and it makes sense that we would use them. I talk a lot with my clients about pilots and flying. My husband is a pilot, and one of the things that pilots use a lot are checklists. There are checklists, I don't know, for taking off. There are checklists for when you talk into the tower. There are obviously checklists for landing, and there are checklists for when things don't go as they can. If there's some warning light or something, there'll be a checklist they have to go through to triage and figure out, diagnose, and then to take action, right? There's no shame. I'm sure a pilot doesn't feel shame about having a takeoff checklist or a landing checklist, even when they've flown for thousands of hours, right? In fact, it's super sensible. Right? It's just there. It's something to think, yeah, we've done that, we've done that, we've done that, we've done that. It's just the same with tools like drink plans and other things that you have out there to help you change your relationship with alcohol. If it's something that helps you, that's good. Stop shaming yourself for using that thing. Fourth way to stop this kind of rebelling against yourself is, I would recommend you just don't talk about never. Right? I'm never going to drink again, or I'm never going to be able to drink again. I would just ditch that language, right? Because when you focus on never drinking again, that doesn't feel very empowering, right? It might feel terrible for you. Maybe fear comes up, or maybe you get that shame coming up, or resentment, or rebellion, right? Who says I'm never going to drink again? Huh? I'll show you. Remember, I used to think it would be so terrifically dreary. That was my go-to word. It's going to be dreary to never have a glass of Chablis again. So I just didn't go there. I just didn't say it. It was never my intention, by the way, to not drink ever anyway. Just kind of happened. But anyway, so stop using this never language. Just don't think it's helpful. Nobody likes to be convinced of something. I bet you can think of many things in your lives where you don't like to be convinced. So instead of saying never, make space for, well, where are you right now? Right? What are you seeking right now? What would be a good move for you right now? What are you thinking? And by the way, maybe you don't need to make a decision for the rest of your life. Maybe you can just decide right now you want to moderate a little bit. Right? It feels less restrictive and more freeing, and you'll be more open to seeing what comes up. And I'm going to say on my coaching calls, I see time and again that we start with these goals. I always ask my clients, what are you looking to achieve? And they'll tell me whatever it is. And it's usually to some flavor of moderation. But the more we get into the work, the more they start to play around with that a little more. They start to see the possibility, right? We start to flex our muscles. And then we sort of say, well, that was the goal before, but I've achieved that now. What next can I achieve? What is it I really want? And we can then ask that question beyond drinking and to all areas of our lives. I often get into talking about relationships and work and all of it, right? But so much of this you can ground yourself by just never saying never. It's so worth doing this. It's so worth being aware of this rebellion to ourselves and tackling it. Because when we step into this, when we step into taking responsibility and moving out of emotional childhood and stop all the blaming, not only do the number of incidences when we blame ourselves or other people reduce, but we stop trying to hide from ourselves. Right? We stop excusing ourselves to ourselves. We stop sort of letting ourselves off the hook. There's a difference between being compassionate and backing yourself and then kind of saying, well, yeah, being a bit shilly-shally on it and it doesn't really matter. No, it really does matter. It matters a lot. Our commitment to our goals matters a lot. But then if we're committed and then we kind of start blaming ourselves for all the things we're having to do and really acting out, that doesn't get us anywhere, right? So to be empowered, if we want to stop drinking behind our own back, when we end up feeling more empowered, we're going to do that more, right? And we're going to end up becoming the person that we want to be. I found this myself, right? When I did this, when it came to drinking, I managed to create the relationship I wanted with alcohol, mainly because I wasn't out there sniping against myself. It was kind of me linked arms with me. I was linking arms actually with my future me, right? But I wasn't then, when things didn't go to plan, I wasn't out there. I sort of dropped the blame game and I stopped rebelling against myself, and it felt better and I had more energy. It was far less exhausting. So homework, I always like to set homework. What I want to encourage you to do is to explore this in your own life. How this shows up, how this sort of blaming and this rebellion shows up in drinking and, by the way, in your life overall. Because why we drink, it's not ever really about the drink. It's always about something that's happening in our lives. So if you're rebelling against something in your life, that is likely the reason that's pushing you to take the action of having a drink. So discovering where you're being a bit rebellious in your own life is useful too. Find some examples where you're acting with what I call low emotional intelligence without judgment, right? Where you can see you're acting out. Where are you blaming others in your life? Or where are you blaming yourself? Where are you not taking responsibility? Where do you feel it's just not fair? Right? This gets you into the space of entitlement when we're feeling this way. And that's in the place of not taking responsibility for the actions that you're taking in the world. You're kind of doing stuff, but it's like, it's not my fault. Right? But knowing we have a choice in how we respond to everything, we have a choice in how we feel about everything, and we have a choice on how to look about and think about every single thing in our lives, every single thing that happens to us. It is so powerful, my friends. I hope you can hear that. I get kind of worked up when I think about this. I want you to look in your life where you can take more responsibility than you do today. How can you stop blaming yourself or others for things that have happened? And ultimately, think ahead, project ahead. If you did that, if you did drop the judgment, if you did drop the blame, and if you did drop kind of the whininess, how would that change the results that you're getting in your life? If this resonates with you and you want to stop over drinking and you want to stop fast, we have got to talk. I can help you. This is what I do. Go to 90dayslater.co and book a consultation call with me. It is free. That call is free, and on it I'll build the exact steps for you to get the result that you want. I'll show you how you can get freedom around alcohol in a way that's going to reduce the amount of rebellion you bring to the picture. All right? Whatever that means for you in terms of your goal, whether you just want to drink less or you want to give up entirely. I am without judgment on that. That's it for this week. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time. If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first glass of wine the moment 6 p.m. rolls around and they don't miss out on life. And we do it in 90 days. The effect is permanent. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.